record. So welcome to our August NASEO Buildings Committee meeting on statewide building energy improvement and target setting programs, where we'll hear from Pennsylvania, as well as some partners within Texas on their state approaches, as well as our federal partners on the technical assistance that they've been offering to various other states. This topic is one that we aim to cover quarterly, where our last presentation had focused on a practitioner's perspective from Washington State, and that was really informative in learning about the process of implementing a legislated building performance standard, whereas today we'll be learning more about kind of other approaches, which may include like lead by example that target publicly owned buildings and those that engage local governments to stand up initiatives of their own. So that kind of covered the agenda already. So we'll first be kicking it off with a few resources that NASEO has to share. Then we'll also be hearing from Pennsylvania and Texas, as well as EPA and DOE, and then save the Q&A for the very end. So today I'm joined by a great group of panelists. We have Heidi Kunch, the environmental group manager of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, followed by Mark Hand, the director of Green Gov Council under the Pennsylvania Department of General Services. And then from the Texas team, we'll be hearing from Sean Auckland, the local government program manager of SPEAR, the Regional Energy Efficiency Organization for the Central Region, as well as Marina, the director of Strategic Initiatives and External Affairs at HARC, or the Houston Advanced Research Center. And then we'll also be hearing from Brendan Hall of EPA and Billy Ray Engelman of US DOE. I won't really go into the weeds on this like resource snapshot, but NASEO does have several resources that states can reference on energy improvements for their existing commercial building stock. A lot of these live on our website, and these slides will be distributed after the fact. So these are kind of quick links that folks can click through. We notably have been keeping our federal funding tracker updated. So for folks who have joined our calls for this building committee in the past, you may have visited this resource before, but it essentially lays out some of the relevant funding opportunities under the Inflation Reduction Act and the IIJA for building owners and state agencies to consider for building energy improvements. And we've kept this fairly updated. There are like certainly many other resources out there that compile these funding opportunities, but we've been going in fairly regularly to update with next milestones and deadlines for people to visit as a central repository. So with that, I think I'll be passing it over to Mark now to kick us off for presentation from Pennsylvania, or actually first Heidi, to give a little overview of Pennsylvania's activity before handing it off to Mark. So Heidi, take it away.
All right, thanks, Jasmine. So I work in the Energy Programs Office here at the PADEP, and in the eyes of the U.S. Department of Energy, we are viewed as the State Energy Office. So in Pennsylvania, the State Energy Office is housed at PADEP. So we receive our annual State Energy Program funding from U.S. Department of Energy to carry out all sorts of excellent energy projects and programs in the Commonwealth. One of my roles here in the Energy Programs Office is to support the PA Green Gov Council in their efforts to promote sustainability to all state agencies in Pennsylvania. You're going to be hearing from Mark Hand shortly, our Green Gov director, and he also has one staffer, Matt Reese, who supports his work. So together I call them M&M fondly. They're M&M. We work closely together. So our relationship with Green Gov is that Mark actually is a veteran of the Pennsylvania DEP's Energy Programs Office. So he's basically one of us, as we like to say, and thus we make great partners and we're old friends. Thus we enjoy supporting him and his work over at Green Gov. And actually, we're called to do that in the first executive order from the Governor Wolf administration during his second term in office, which began in January 2019. So that executive order established the PA Green Gov Council, as well as our first ever greenhouse gas reduction goals for the Commonwealth, and also stated that the Secretary of Department of General Services, where Green Gov is housed, and the Secretary of DEP, where I'm housed, and the Secretary of our Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, all three of those secretaries would co-chair the Green Gov Council. And so the executive order also stated various responsibilities for each of those three state agencies. And the role for DEP is for us to serve as technical support to Green Gov Council. So we gladly do that by providing some of our annual state energy program dollars from DOE to support a Green Gov project each year. So in the past, we've supported the development of green lease for our Commonwealth buildings. We're also still working on a project from last year's SEP funding year to develop sustainable building training modules. That project got an extension into this current fiscal year. But those training modules are going to be for our state agencies, as well as those architecture and engineering firms that bid on our Commonwealth new construction and major renovation projects, to get them educated on sustainable buildings. And then finally, in the current SEP funding year, we just kicked off our building performance standard development project that Mark is going to be sharing more details with you about. And so just briefly how this idea sort of began, we received an email from Jasmine at NASEO and EPA back in December 2022, containing a survey on whether we were interested in some free support on building energy benchmarking and BPS. To which we responded yes on the latter, because we already do the prior. We've already been doing building energy benchmarking. And Mark's going to share more with you about that. But we've been contracting with Penn State's Facilities Engineering Institute, or FEI, as we call them, for a while now to do energy benchmarking for all our Commonwealth buildings. So our next logical step in Pennsylvania was BPS. And it was perfect timing for me to get that email from Jasmine back in December, because I had just gotten back a month earlier from Green Build, the annual conference and expo of the U.S. Green Building Council that I've been attending, been to it about a dozen times because I'm a lead AP. I get my continuing ed there. And I attended a great session from Alex Dews, who leads the National BPS Coalition on behalf of the Institute for Market Transformation, and his presentation was excellent, and it inspired me to come back home and see if we could do an SEP funded project supporting Green Gov in developing BPS policy development. And so my job, like I said, I just plant seeds over with Mark and Matt for project ideas and see if they grow. And this one really did. Mark and Matt have done a stellar job bringing this project to full fruition. We just had our kickoff call with Penn State FEI, our contractor, our SEP funded contractor for this project at the end of July, last Thursday. So we're on our way here. And we are also using free technical assistance from a team of folks at EPA, DOE, and their national labs, as well as EPA's contractor Guidehouse, to get us educated on the basics of BPS. And that's a result of that survey that Jasmine sent out in EPA last December. So thanks to NASEO and EPA for their support and getting us educated on BPS. And now I want to turn things over to Mark at GreenGov.
Excellent. Thanks, Heidi. Just appreciate the introduction and the, being a part of this call today. You can go to the next slide. We'll move along. And I just wanted to just try to briefly, and I'm going to try to keep it brief, cover where we are with the Building Performance Standards project. I personally see building performance standards are the key component for large portfolios. I think probably most folks do. And so I just want to talk about where we are with our implementation status, some of our key partners, which Heidi already mentioned, which is our Penn State folks and also the building technical assistance folks. And then just sort of what I see, or at least in my crystal ball right now, is possible next steps, at least next steps after this contract is up and we have sort of the BPS standards available to us. Next slide. So I just kind of got fun with this slide. We all are familiar with you can't manage what you don't measure. I think that's drilled in all of our heads, but I just kind of was playing around, and I think you can't meet urgent climate goals without an overall facility plan and strategy. For the last several years, I feel like we've been sort of taking on efficiency projects and just individual building projects one by one, and it's not going to work in a large portfolio. And then you also can't expect others to adopt BPS if you're not willing to implement it. It's just an important strategy for us. We need to get in this arena as well. So next slide. So where is the Commonwealth just generally with energy management? We have, of course, a greenhouse gas reductions emissions goal as part of our lead by example. Since we are the lead by example program, it's just that most of you have probably these goals. We also have a 3% energy reduction goal annually to meet per our executive order. We track utilities through Energy Cap. If anyone's heard of that, that's a Pennsylvania-based software provider that helps us with our utility benchmarking for electric, gas, and steam. And just like most of you, we deliver projects through performance contracting and capital improvements. And we call this next step opportunities, but it's kind of also sort of gaps in our process is we really don't have sort of a portfolio approach. We don't energy management system policies and procedures are kind of, need to be implemented. We, long-term planning for our portfolio is at least from an energy standpoint is not, factored in all the time. And we definitely have disconnects between our facility staff and our executive leadership regarding energy use in facilities. So that's kind of where we stand after sort of 4 years of GreenGov. Next slide. So this is just, this is sort of what we're able to do right now with Energy Cap is roll up our utilities and at least historically in an annual report. And I just wanted to put this in for perspective. You can kind of see the total utility accounts at the bottom, number of meters that we're tracking. And then we have this is sort of a report of how we look at 1 year to the next. And we're pretty good at rolling up data on an annual basis in an aggregate form. And I often tell Matt, my coworker, and Heidi and others that every year Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute works with us to pull together our annual report for where we are, whether we met our goals to reduce energy and reduce carbon dioxide. And it's kind of like we just sort of like no one actually knows until the report comes out, and it's just surprise, you either met it or you didn't meet it. And but we have been aggressive with some of our energy reduction strategies. And so we have made progress, as you can see, with 12% reduction, but it's not, I mean, there's a little bit of luck, I guess, maybe in that, or and there's some other factors too, but it's building performance standards would certainly help to give more certainty that we're going to continue reducing in the future. Next slide. And so one of the key parts of building performance for us is having an energy cap active management of that. It's as most of you know, if you're working in these systems, it's ongoing. I guess fortunately for me, I don't have to work in this system, but there's a couple others that do. We started out in, I believe, 2017 with one part-time employee that was doing this and purchasing personal protective equipment and some other things. And now he and another person have full-time jobs implementing energy cap, that just recently happened like a year ago, which is kind of a game changer for us, having dedicated staff, and then the other thing that we have, maybe that other states don't necessarily have, is we have a central utility billing process. I've heard from other states where they try to get utility information from all the facilities all over the state, which sounds kind of messy. I'm sorry for everyone that has to do that. We don't capture, so it's not a perfect system. We aren't capturing every bill. Some of them are paid by credit card, or like they're still not like capturing them in our central process. But I guess several administrations ago, someone decided that it was more cost effective to run everything through a central billing process. And then sort of like the downside to that decision years ago was you took sort of the energy management away from the facilities because they lost control of their utility payment and sort of analysis. And so now we're kind of coming back with giving them energy cap and being able to roll it up for them and giving them access to their facilities through our central energy cap system. So we actually have a work plan with agencies where the staff are looking to add water sewer accounts, sort of expand. There's always ongoing training. We have a process in place where we want to share quarterly reports to executive staff so that the executive staff start to get familiar with their own portfolio in each agency, which is not happening otherwise. So we're just trying, you got to create this energy culture. And then, we don't have the cleanest setup yet for knowing facility space types and kind of having everything connected by gross square footage and things like that. So things that we're working on, these things have to be shored up as we are working on the BPS implementation. So next slide. And so, we were just talking about Penn State Facilities Engineering Institute. I guess one of the things that we have too, that's just pretty special in the Commonwealth, is we have this Facilities Engineering Institute. They're out of Penn State College of Engineering. They got their first contract with Pennsylvania 75 years ago. And their mission is literally to help the Commonwealth with engineering and facility related items. We have retail, they help us shop for retail electricity and gas. They do engineering services. They have contracts with most of our larger agencies, facility groups, and they're a trusted resource for us. And all the Commonwealth agencies generally look to them for support and trust that they're going to get great opinions from Penn State. So that's really nice to have. Next slide. So they were sort of a natural fit for us to go and pursue a BPS contract because, for everything mentioned before. So basically this is what they're looking to do within this contract within the year, is they're going to participate with the BPS Technical Assistance Network, because they're, in the trenches with all of our agencies. So they have some things to catch up with BPS nationally. It's not really, something that they're keeping an eye on until now. They certainly have all the capabilities in the world to do this. So it's just a matter of getting them caught up with sort of what's going on and out there. And then, you know, they're going to research national BPS models. They're going to work to create BPS technical standards for different space types. And by the way, we have just about every space type, probably, you know, that you could imagine in the Commonwealth. So we'll capture a lot of them with this project. And the other piece that I wanted to make sure was in there is like you have to have sort of the management system, or at least the structure framework to support BPS, which I said earlier doesn't necessarily exist in a really streamlined, solid format. So they're going to help us figure out how to implement across agencies. And they, frankly, they know our facilities as much as probably we know our facilities and our facility staff. So they're going to help us figure out sort of the management process behind it and help us through that. And then, you know, they're going to deliver informational tools and help us explain the BPS program and processes to whomever is asking in a year. So including our leadership. So next slide. So I think this is my last slide, but I don't know, this is my crystal ball slide, I guess, but I think some of the outcomes of this BPS contract would be, the greatest thing would be inclusion in an executive order, or basically making it, you know, a permanent part of our energy management in the Commonwealth, one way or another. The other thing is that Penn State, obviously they have contracts with all these agencies. So, you know, they are working and actually reporting on many of these facilities, so they can sort of, you know, add the BPS support to these contracts. They work with outside entities, not just the Commonwealth, so other municipalities and different groups. So some of this can be expanded, such as like, I'm hopeful that maybe someday we can capture our universities and colleges through our state system higher education, which wasn't included on our reporting because they're an independent agency, but they probably are one of the larger Commonwealth agencies with all the college campuses across the state. And, you know, I think, you know, other things that might be outcomes is if we have 3 working models in the state, with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia having a BPS standard and practice, and then the Commonwealth as well, we're kind of working through, you know, opportunities for implementation through the state as examples. And then, of course, you know, we need to establish energy management business processes, which are need to be propped up to support this, which is definitely going to be an outcome of this process, is gaps that we need to fill. And then I'm concerned personally about the financial piece to this. You know, so building performance standards tells you where you should be, but then we have financial folks in the Commonwealth that, you know, have the budget and the purse strings. And so we sort of have to figure out how to bring this together with, you know, the building performance and like the tools for budget analysis. And I don't know if that's social cost of carbon. We were just talking a few hours ago about, you know, trying to get a budget for, you know, sustainable projects in the Commonwealth so that we could supplement some of the ongoing capital programs. But so there's we have some of the cost issues are a concern for me long term, but we will cross that bridge, I guess, when we come to it. And I think that's it for me. Appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heidi and Mark. For any questions folks might have for both those presenters, feel free to add them to the chat and we can revisit them. But for now, I'll be passing it over to Sean. Sean, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for having us. So we're not, I'm speaking for through a collaboration. I'm a local government program manager here. We're based out of Central Texas, and we collaborate and work with Houston Advanced Research Center and are supported by the State Energy Conservation Office. So just to talk a little bit about my organization, next slide. Thanks. It is, I work with the South Central Partnership for Energy Efficiency as a resource. And who we are a part of a national network of regional energy efficiency organizations known as RIOs. And I'm probably speaking to the choir here, that several of you are pretty familiar with RIOs, but just want to emphasize how we're one of 6 sphere. Our region that we cover is Texas and Oklahoma. And we're mainly funded through partnerships with the U.S. Department of Energy, collaborations with utilities, as well as the State Energy Office, and then also private foundations. We support third-party program administrators, advocacy groups, businesses, just to increase the reach of RIOs and energy efficiency throughout the state, Texas and Oklahoma. We also are one of the newest RIOs in the nation. We're fairly new. We got started in around 2013. And our mission is driven to accelerate the adoption of advanced building systems and energy efficient products and technologies. So our 2 states that we cover is nearly 30 million people and more than half of the fastest growing cities in the nation. And we are a member-based organization with about 40 members, including manufacturers, utilities, energy services companies, nonprofits, cities, and universities. And the basis of our work really focuses in building codes. We work with building code officials, builders, contractors, and then we also, with our work and training, and through the work of our partners, 90% of permits issued in Texas are now issued under the 2015 IECC or equivalent. So that's pretty great. We also have a program with the Building Operator Certification. It's a training program based on the U.S. Department of Energy's 2011 skill standard for operating engineers and building technicians. The program's created and validated by experts and practitioners. We have it virtual now with from the past couple of years with that pivot to the virtual world. And with that, according to one study, the average savings for every participant who goes through the BOC program is about $10,500 dollars annually in cost savings. And then we also do educational resource work through policy. So we're one of the few bipartisan nonprofits in the state of Texas that people from both sides, Republicans and Democrats, will come to for information and resources regarding energy. And finally, local governments, with this myself. My work primarily focuses on peer-to-peer networks, and I provide resources to support public sector through energy efficiency projects. And that can be providing them resources for grants, even endeavoring and assisting them with their grants, making sure that they have the correct terminology and also goals and emphasis that will help them be the best candidate. And also just getting to know what cities want and what they're working on, and then encouraging best practices and insights from other entities in the region they've completed similar work. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide and how I do that. And I do that by pushing forward. It's called the City Efficiency Leadership Council. City is a part of the name, but it's actually a collaboration of cities, school districts, and other public entities engaged in partnership and resource exchange. And We work with universities, school districts, counties, and even state offices. And this council, the membership and the organization of it is all sponsored by the State Energy Conservation Office. And that actually leads into how we're here, and that's through requests by the State Energy Conservation Office to talk about this program. And the purpose of CLC is to align regional partner initiatives. So we're more of a hub. So we bring people together and so that they can further their initiatives. And maybe that's they need a partner for grants, or if that's also doing best practices so that, the city of Louisville can learn about what's going on in city of El Paso, and if there's some commonalities on their projects. And then also we work with identifying funding opportunities for projects, and then mentorship. And then we also collaborate. There's been several regional projects that we have supported them on. Next slide. And we do that really in a reflection of numbers is fostering engagement. So we work with the people who come and are willing to be a part of our council and be members. We have about 55 plus, and they come forward and say, yes, we're willing to invest. And it's a low number of hours. It's about 10 hours a year, and being engaged in this program and being able to be there to network and learn from each other, but also to share our knowledge. We also have, in the past 2 years, we had 18 roundtables engaging 147 attendees with over 50 different cities. And again, I know that Texas is fairly large, and as well as Oklahoma, but in the Texas, when we have 254 counties, but some of these are really rural regions, but most of the population is in urban areas. Having 50 different cities to be engaged is pretty great. And then next slide, how we also do this is through webinars. And with that, our webinars range, as you can I gave a snapshot. If you look through, and I'm not going to read them, but our webinars are membership directed. So they come to us and say, we want to learn this. And so I then organize that for them. And it's a great feedback loop, because we do ask that question in our survey. Now, what is your next step? What actions are you going to take from spending this hour with us out of your day? And a lot of them say, my next step is working with my city council and pushing this forward, or I'm going to be working on an energy plan, or I'm going to start working on examining our plug loads management. So it's fantastic to get that kind of feedback and know that there's going to be some actionable items that they take next after experience, like learning from these webinars that we do have. And we have them all on YouTube. So there's about over 100 educational opportunities for them. And the people who attend, they also receive CEUs for it through ICC. We've had over 26 webinars in 2 years with a total of like 1,000 plus attendees, which has been great. And then some of them have been so well attended, such as like embracing blockchain with sustainability. In Texas, there's kind of a hub of cryptocurrency. So it was a very well attended webinar because they need to know what's going on and how they can make these spaces and talk through economic development about like, hey, this is what we need. You're coming to our city. This is how we need to be more energy efficient. And so we can support you. Next slide. And then we also engage through local governments. A strong engagement and feedback loop is one thing that we all know is this is really hard work of pushing a boulder sometimes uphill. And so we give the local governments in the state of Texas and Oklahoma a platform to get recognition. So it gives them space to say, hey, I worked really hard on pushing this policy forward, and now we have an energy policy. So we give them that space in our monthly newsletters. We have about over 1,100 subscribers. and the average open rate is 38%, which is fantastic for the number of newsletters everyone receives daily. So they really utilize this, and we also give it's also a platform for job opportunities, as well as sharing of toolkits. So one thing I haven't mentioned, but Marina will probably lean on a little bit more, is that all this work is very led by a local government with no sticks. We don't have any sticks or carrots. So really people who want to be involved and learn are really being pushed by their constituents or the public. And so, the benefits for them is just being able to have cross promotion. And then I also provide technical assistance. I worked for a local government, a county agency, and also city for more than a decade. So I guide them because I'm used to having to guide sometimes in these navigating interesting political waters. So I give them assistance on the best way they can navigate and push a policy forward internally so that externally they can support the public. So we provide templates with policy, resolutions, and plans. And then again, the stakeholder engagement. Next slide. And being that being in a space where as Texans, most Texans, they're very much where they don't want to be government led, but local governments, they do want to have a voice. And so this past year, what the feedback I had received about 2 years ago when I was meeting with local governments is they said they didn't really have a space to provide their voice. And so this past year, we rolled out with assistance of HARC, a local government kind of community engagement survey. So we assessed what their interests are right now and what their resource needs are. We engaged and distributed this opportunity for a survey to more than 1,000 contacts. And with that, we did get as much participation as sometimes that you may in a space where you're looking for surveys and we don't have gift cards that we're giving out. So we did get about 45 respondents, and I'll have to say I'm proud of that. I'll take the wins where I can. But it really focused on illustrating having a better understanding of what their needs are in sustainability. We also covered electrification, training needs, and then we followed up with focus groups. We'll have our last focus group next week. And next slide. And I'm also really excited. We had known that this was an issue with that my feedback was just local governments in Texas were having a hard time getting good staff that had the technical background that was needed. And so we organized a very small cohort. We have about a representative from a council of governments, which is here locally in Texas, that they receive federal funding and then they distribute it to counties and cities. And then we also have 2 cities participating and 2 universities. And we get together and talk about what are those training gaps? Where should we focus that on? How should that be distributed? What kind of platforms can be utilized? How can we scale this across the state? And right now we're kind of looking at designing that. We'll have a final report that we'll share with the State Energy Conservation Office. Next slide. So thank you so much. I'm going to lead this on to Marina.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Hey, everyone. Great to be here. On the next slide, I can just give a quick overview of HARC. As Jasmine mentioned, we're Houston Advanced Research Center. We're a Texas-based nonprofit research organization where we focus on providing independent analysis on air, energy, water, climate equity, and resilience issues. And really our focus is to apply science to drive solutions for a sustainable and equitable future. And our research activities support the work that Sean and others are doing across the state, which is the implementation of policies as well as technologies that promote sustainability as well as equity. And really our foundation is that, the scientific principles upon which all of this is based. And so for the next slide, as Sean mentioned, this is Texas. It's not a super mandate heavy state. We try to carrot and carrot cake folks to go in the right direction with things. And a lot of this, as Sean mentioned, are efforts that either are being pushed forward by constituents, or what we're seeing also is that local governments are often really leading by example with their own building stock and putting in place different policies that will govern municipal or county facilities to be able to push forward what some of these best practices can be. To date, Austin is the only city that has mandatory benchmarking policy. There were some efforts to try to move that forward in some other jurisdictions, but again, it's Texas, so we didn't really get a whole lot of traction on that. So what we have done, given the fact that it's kind of a mandate averse region, is to be able to figure out on the next slide, really what the local governments want and need. And a lot of that, Sean talked about the outreach and engagement that Spear's doing, funded by SECO. And SECO really has been the driving force to being able to push forward a lot of these pieces. And on our side, it's how do we complement that by working with the local governments, finding out what not only what they want and what they need, but also identifying what they don't yet know that they need, especially regarding the tools and resources. So as a result of that, a few years ago, again, funded through SECO, we created the Texas Clean Energy Hub. And this houses a variety of interactive tools, webinars, podcasts, guides, case studies. And really the goal of this is to help accelerate the adoption of distributed generation and energy efficiency projects in Texas. So we've got a couple of examples of those, starting on the next slide with our benchmarking transparency toolkit. Basically, this is a project that was initially funded through DOE, passed through to SECO, for us to develop a web-based tool similar to like a LegalZoom that would help communities across the state to be able to benchmark their own government buildings, and then also be able to create programs that could be voluntary for other buildings within that community. And so on the next slide, you'll see kind of the way that it's structured is we set it up in basically 3 buckets. Is one for local governments to be able to lead by example, develop a program for their own building stock. One that is voluntary, kind of a green office challenger, you will, and then the mandatory policies framework as well. And again, this was, our goal with this was to make it as easy as possible so that we could get folks to start engaging with the tools and really understanding A, what the benefits of benchmarking are, and B, what the process to move through a program, again, for governments to do this on their own buildings so that they can lead by example, and then hopefully stair step into voluntary programs and then mandatory programs. And as I mentioned, this really is structured like a LegalZoom. You basically just kind of fill in the blanks, and then at the end, it shoots out a pretty cool PDF. Also with this, we have on the site some additional tools and resources. There is an Ask the Expert section where you can ask questions. And so we try to create basically a comprehensive resource, taking a look at all the best practices that were out there, and as we like to say, appropriately Texifying them for the market that we have here. And then in partner with that, we also developed a building performance standards tool. Jasmine, if we go to the next slide, please. And so this tool was designed for the local governments, or for people working with the local governments who were interested in learning more about what building performance standards are, how to develop and implement them. And this was really focused more on the commercial sector. And so here again, we try to compile some of the best practices that are out there with our resources and case studies. Also have a pretty robust frequently asked questions section. And then if you'll go to the next slide, kind of this is an outline of the steps for how to develop a building performance standard. And so with this, what we did was really get the considerations that would be needed to highlight the steps for developing a BPS. And so with that, basically there's these different questions in different sections. So like the first one here, plan to engage stakeholders. what stakeholders should you be engaging them? How should you be engaging them? What are the best forms of engagement? We also have helpful hints. We've got references and case studies that are built into each step of this. So the goal is that a local government would basically use this framework. And then at the end, they would have a pretty straightforward building performance standard that could then be implemented either as a voluntary program or as a mandatory program. And, don't yet have a local government that has formally adopted this for the private sector, but we do have some cities that are developing building performance standards for municipal buildings. So we're excited to see that things are moving forward. Do we have as much traction and uptake as we see in some of the other markets across the country? Maybe not, but again, this is Texas, and we do things at our own pace and in our own style. But the important thing is that we're doing this stuff. So with that, Jasmine, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marina. And last but not least, we have some contact information, but that's not last or least. And also a presentation from our partners over at DOE and EPA. So Brendan or Billy Ray, feel free to take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine. I will keep this very short and sweet, as I think will Brendan, to leave time for a Q&A. But yeah, so the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency have joined together to provide technical assistance for building performance standards and other similar building intervention policies. And if you'll actually move to the next slide, we'll just skip past this. That's the team, but I really want to focus in on what we provide and to whom. So big picture, we provide TA to any and all jurisdictions at the state and or local level who are interested in or working on a building performance standard or a similar policy, as I mentioned before. And so those are jurisdictions that are working or are committed to the National BPS Coalition that the White House, the Biden administration kicked off, but they are also jurisdictions who are not publicly committed to that or participating in that. And so we welcome any and all across the board for this support. I will also say that the technical assistance we are providing is at no cost to those jurisdictions at this time. So definitely feel free to reach out to us and take advantage. And then across both the agencies and our national lab partners, we provide a range of support. You can see some of that listed here. Some of the key ones are building stock and impact analyses for the policies, target setting and metric selection, some of the more sort of technical nitty-gritty support. But then in addition, we also provide support on the policy implementation and administration side of things. And so both DOE and EPA have software tools and resources to support jurisdictions in their administration efforts. And then we also have support and sort of best practices type of resources for stakeholder engagement or designing your own resource hub or help desk, that kind of thing. Jasmine, if you'll move to the next slide. Yeah, this is pretty much the same content here, and very much we'll be able to share these slides later, but I want to move quickly through this so that we don't run out of time. Brendan, you want to chime in here?
Sure. I mean, I think Billy Ray said a lot of it, but we have the tool portfolio manager, of course, that's central to a lot of all the benchmarking and building performance standard requirements out there. So we can help you think through how to use that. We also provide support on reviewing draft policies or rules. We can support efforts around providing whole building energy data to building owners, how working with utilities to make sure that's available as sort of a key gap in a lot of places where multifamily and multi-tenant building owners can actually see how much energy they're using at a building level. Anyway, so we have a lot of different support across all phases of sort of policy design or program design and implementation. Yeah. Back to you, Billy Ray.
So these are just some of the tool highlights that we were mentioning before that are either no cost or low cost and available to jurisdictions. And some of these are also building owner facing. And so we support implementation approaches across all those sort of market actors. Next slide, please, Jasmine. And then here is just a layout of the type of sort of tools and data software ecosystem that we might recommend for a jurisdiction who is thinking about implementing either benchmarking or building performance standards or something similar. Is just a way to think about reducing administrative burden across all different actors and leveraging the publicly available tools that we have across the agencies. Next slide, please. All right, keeping it very short and sweet today, but please reach out. We are happy to help you all. We're happy to have, kickoff meetings, just thinking through, whatever stage you're at in your policy design, adoption, and or implementation stage or process. And as just a note, Brendan and myself are definitely available as contacts, but you also may hear from our contractor Guidehouse moving forward as they're supporting some of the coordination and facilitation across all these different organizations that you're seeing on the page. So you don't have to be the one to figure out who to go talk to at any one of these organizations. So just a note from us on that piece. But yeah, we are happy to answer questions. We're happy to support you all. And thank you for the time today.
Great, thanks. So we've only left about 5 minutes for any questions that the audience might have, but feel free to chime in if anybody has any questions, reactions, words of support. Feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat.
Jasmine, this is Jason in Mississippi.
Hi, Jason.
And I was just going to say, we're transitioning over to energy cap as well. And I know some of the other states have discussed it. And, that might be something valuable to add to one of the breakout sessions or something like that at some of the NASEO conferences. A lot of folks seem to be headed that direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think if you would find it useful to connect with Heidi and Mark on their experience using Energy Cap. Heidi, Mark don't want to volunteer you all, but could be really nice to kind of build that connection and learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. If you want to reach out afterwards, just let us know.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Well, I have a question for the panelists. Everyone feel free to chime in on this, but I think from what we've heard from both Pennsylvania and Texas, there's just been, a lot of collaboration between the state energy office and, all these partner organizations that come together to make like building energy improvement programs and policies possible. So like, would you have any, words of advice or best practices for like identifying these key stakeholders? Like, what was your process in doing so? I know we don't have SECO on the line to provide that state energy office perspective, but like to the extent that, Marina and Sean have, you all have perspective into how those partnerships came to be, it could be helpful to hear.
As we're both super polite and waits for the other one to go first. I would say a big part of it is just collaboration. And as Sean said, you know, Spear's been doing a ton of outreach and engagement to cities. And really it is just developing that network of relationships that I think they and HARC as well have just developed over time. And then through that, as well as folks that basically are identified by the State Energy Office, kind of just developing that directory and that network. And from there, kind of feeling out as folks transition, as local governments may shift and move, trying to shift and move with that so that we can provide the tools and resources that can help to move forward, you know, clean energy, energy efficiency. Sean, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I was just going to add to what Heidi had said earlier about planting seeds. I think as you know, from my perspective, the reason why I was so interested in working for Spear is that we're very open to planting seeds and collaborating with other agencies, local governments or nonprofits, just to further this initiative. And you know, I feel as though Texas is just a huge state that we can all just play together and support each other in this work. So I think that that's how a lot of the collaboration worked, is that Spear's been doing this work for a long time, but we're also open to conversations. And, you know, honestly, if I have an idea that may not be a great fit for Spear to move forward, I'll reach out to somebody else and say, hey, have you thought about this? And that's what this is all about. It's okay if they move that idea forward and they get a grant, because that helps move the needle forward. And that's my perspective on it. I think that that's why Spear and HARC have collaborated for so long through the state. And SECO has been fantastic and moving the needle forward and supporting local governments. And really excited to see what happens next year.
And as for Pennsylvania, with our lead by example policies that we've been supporting through our SEP dollars, this particular one that we talked about today was obviously through a pre-existing partnership that we already had with Penn State FEI via a longstanding 75 years, as Mark said, which was new to me when he told me that during our prep for this session today. I didn't realize it was 75 years, but so we already have like FEI on contract through the state in that example. The other two lead by example projects that we've supported Green Gov with, like the Green Leasing Project, that one we actually put out to bid, I believe, using our invitation to qualify list, our ITQ list. And then the project for sustainable building training modules, we used a current master agreement that we have with Penn State University, not the one that we have with FEI, but Penn State in general, that we have here at DEP. And as long as a project is under a certain amount of money, and I'm blanking on the amount right now, but we can just say we're going to use Penn State for this project instead of going through the process of having to put it out to bid. So that's always nice.
Well, nice. It's great to hear about how these partnerships have been streamlined and then also streamline the process for the eventual beneficiaries of some of these programs to access all these various experts. So we are at time. I want to thank all of our presenters for just being so willing to talk about their programs and share their expertise on this call. We'll be sending out all the slides and the recordings to the session, and really appreciate everyone's time in tuning in today. So with that, thank you all and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jasmine. Bye, everyone.